Okay, so there was a new guitar day yesterday, and at some point in this video, I'm going to show you what was in that case. But let's get on with some other stuff first. So if you followed my video about the Magnetone amp that I bought at Peach recently, you'll know that I was actually there originally to go and try a bunch of Paul Reed Smith guitars, following an evening with Paul Reed Smith earlier that week where I'd given a speech about my charity project, and then Paul Reed Smith had donated me an acoustic guitar. If you've been on my channel for a long time, you'll know that I've had Paul Reed Smith guitars before, but for whatever reason, normally due to the fact that I didn't quite bond with them, I've sold them on. I didn't really have the nostalgic connection with Paul Reed Smith that I have with Gibson and Fender, and so this, for the sort of person I am, you know, I like to have that connection with something, and it inspires me. But following the evening with Paul Reed Smith and listening to him talk and meeting him and him being, you know, a really kind, interesting, original sort of person, it did start to create more of a connection in my mind, and I thought it'd be interesting to go and try. And on top of that, there was this new Robben Ford release which I thought looked quite interesting, and John at Peach allowed me to go along and look at their whole sort of collection of Paul Reed Smith guitars. So in this video I'm going to take you through 4 or 5 different guitars and see how they felt playing. I started with that 1985 original Paul Reed Smith. On the back of it, it's got Paul Reed Smith's personal signature and it says "To Dave." So I assume it was made for someone called Dave back in the day in 1985. That guitar was really interesting to play, actually. It felt lovely. It's great how you could see the whole DNA of Paul Reed Smith already existed right from day dot. I know he'd been developing for a few years by then, but from production, this is how it started. This one, definitely not for sale, according to John, but no, I've heard people say that the earliest ones are probably the best, and it's quite weighty. But I think, yeah, you can see exactly where, you know, the future came from with this. Bloody hell. Incredibly resonant guitar. The guitar felt great to play, but I think those pickups were something, you know, they had that sort of distortion feel to them, so they really overtook the sound a little bit. But I think for certain things, actually, that sound could be really cool, and to me, it had that sort of 80s and early 90s sort of feeling to it. It felt a bit like playing a super Strat sort of thing, you know, sustained for days coming from those pickups. But the guitar itself, if you turned off the volume and played it, it was a ringer, but it was heavy. It was really heavy, actually. But yeah, a really cool piece of history there. Then there was the Silver Sky, which I've never played before. And what I wanted to do was play the Silver Sky and then straight away play a Fender Strat. So just now, you can see me playing John at Peach's own Dale Wilson Masterbuilt Strat here, which is a wonderful guitar. But let's hear it first. Have you got this decked or something?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So what do I think of the Silver Sky? Actually, yeah, it's a really great guitar, I find. It's got a lot of PRS DNA in there. Looks-wise, I could get used to the headstock. Not the grey tuners. I think I'd have to change those personally. But it's comfortable to play. The neck shape doesn't quite feel like a Fender one. There's a certain thickness in different places. It's hard to describe, and I didn't play it for long enough to sort of remember nearly 2 weeks later. But the thing about it for me is If I was going to have a Strat of that price, I would probably get one of the new vintage 2s. To me, that just fulfills a lot of what I would want out of that sort of guitar. And then comparing it to John's Masterbuilt sort of shows off a lot of things. For me, the PRS guitars generally across the whole range, in the pickup design, there's a sort of overtone of PRS. Nothing wrong with that, but there's a clarity and a sort of hi-fi sound that is different from the original types. And so for some styles of playing, the PRS is better. For that John Mayer thing, it's probably just as good as the Strat, if not better. It's got that clarity to it. But for the Stevie Ray Vaughan or Hendrix style, personally, my money would be on a Fender or other sort of vintage style guitar. I mean, they based this Silver Sky on some of their 63, 64 Strats, and compared to my 63, it doesn't feel anything like that. So really nice guitar. I don't think I'd personally have one. I prefer the Fender Strat to the Silver Sky, but I can see why a lot of people would have one, and I imagine it stays in tune better than a Fender as well. Just to say though, that John's Masterbuilt guitar, he was telling me afterwards that a lot of that sound that you can get that gives it that Stevie Ray Vaughan character, if that's what you want, is, you know, the pickups, the strings, the tuning, you know, tuning it down half a step, the thick strings, all of that. It will, all those little tweaks will just get you closer and closer. I have this conversation with people all the time. I think you can get the sound you want of that with any setup, really. It's to do with what's in the playing. John, when he plays, naturally plays in that Stevie Ray Vaughan style. In fact, I've got a clip here, just out of interest. He's playing a Mccarty single cut 594 here. So the 594, so let's get into the Paul Reed Smith guitars now. The 594 is a scale length that is supposed to be like the original sort of Gibson scale length. And so you can see the homage here. They've got the 4 tone controls. When they have the standard Mccarty that's not 594, instead it's the Paul Reed Smith 25-inch scale length, they have the more Paul Reed Smith layout of controls, so you can tell the difference. So we're going to play a couple of 594s here. I just wanted to start out of interest with John playing a 594 single cut, because you can hear how a lot of the playing style and tone is in his fingers. Mccarty's, the 594s, have a real thickness to the tone, which it's like, I guess, the shorter scale length, you know, you get a little bit of that woolliness, but it does give it more of a vintage vibe. I quite enjoy that. I think if I'm going for that vintage vibe though, then probably a Les Paul, but this is a really nice resonant guitar. It sounds great. That's going to find a happy home. I don't think it's for me though, you know. If I'm buying a guitar, then I need that, the feeling in the gut, you know. So I really enjoyed this 594 single cut. It had a great marriage, and I think this is the idea, you know, between the ergonomic style of, you know, the Paul Reed Smith guitar, the Strat type guitar, you know, with belly carves and slightly thinner body, and the shorter scale length is obviously feels a bit more like a Gibson. It's less snappy and it's a bit spongier, which is nice to play depending on what you like. What I did find is it wallowed a bit in the lower end, which is a problem I've had with Gibsons as well. finding the perfect Gibson guitar or PRS guitar is really about finding the one that's A, resonant, and B, not too low in the low end or too bright in the top end. And that's a problem I have with a lot of these guitars. And when people say the wood doesn't matter, well, it has to matter, because I find there are 3 or 4 very specific things you can find in these guitars. You know, one where it's very muffled, one where the low end is just muddy, one where the top end is just shrill, and then one where there's a balance and a resonance across the whole spectrum. And it's not just about pickups, because if you just change the pickups, you can still get those issues. Pickups can help, but it's better to start with the guitar that you're really looking for. So this 594 in particular, here's the thing about Paul Reed Smith Pickup Design. He talked about it on the evening when I saw him, is they want the high end to have low overtones and the low end to have high overtones. That's something that they consider to be like the perfect way around. And it does make a lot of sense. You don't want your top end to be shrill and your low end to be too dark or muddy. So you're trying to create this sound where it's more flute-like, is how I would put it. But to me, that overtone does give a certain flavour of tone to these guitars that I wouldn't always be looking for. And I miss a bit of the wildness of a Gibson, or even, you know, the vintage style Strats, where it feels like someone hasn't... The PRS guitar is going to feel a little bit to me like you've programmed into a computer what you want the perfect guitar to sound like, and then they've printed this out like a guitar printing machine, right? There is that perfection, and that was always my issue with these. But not every Paul Reed Smith is as consistent as people say. I've now played a fair amount and owned a couple, and there is a variance, just like Gibson and Fender, between the perfect one and the ones that are either muddy or bright or too heavy or not resonant enough. This particular Mccarty was lovely, and I liked the idea of it. I just didn't want this particular one. Let's hear the single cut version, which is more shaped like a Les Paul. Actually, before we hear the single cut 594, let's hear a bit of a Gibson Les Paul. This is an R9. Beautiful guitar. It feels a bit like a Les Paul. It's got those low, I think these are the LTs, so these are like the lower wind ones, and they do have that vintage character. Don't think this would be one for me. Just slightly missing a bit of resonance, and I feel that when I'm playing it, but God, is it a good looker. So the first thing to say is, I mean, they're in the same ballpark, and the single cut 594 is a bit different from the double cut one. It has a bit more of the Les Paul mids and the bite. It's just slightly different. It's not a huge difference, and I think for some people the shape of the double cut 594 will be more appealing than the Les Paul shape, and that might be why you're choosing it in the first place. But if I was choosing between the 594 that looks like a Les Paul and the Les Paul, I would choose the Les Paul. It just has more of what I want, which is more bite, more tightness. And in fact, the way the notes come together when you're like playing more than one note, I just enjoy that more with what's in the Gibson, the custom buckers, than in these low wind Paul Reed Smith pickups, which I think are the 5815s. So it could be down to personal taste, that's for sure. The PRS has a different quality, and it has that PRS sound that runs through almost every PRS guitar, which is this thickness in the upper mids and the top end. But there was a bit more bite with this particular guitar than with other Les Paul, with other PRS models. So I think it's something they've tried to do, and it does have a gorgeous look to it. If you want that sort of look, I think, you know, it's stunning. And if you find a great example of this, it's probably absolutely perfect for some people. So it's not that I would discount it. I would try loads out if I was really keen to get one. This particular one was not as resonant. It wallowed more in the bottom end, didn't have quite enough bite at the top end compared to that Les Paul. So if I was choosing that day and I had to play a gig that night with a guitar, I would have picked the Gibson for sure. Right, next we're going to look at the Custom 24 and the DGT. Okay, so we've got a Custom 24 here. So this has like a 5-way selector switch, 1 volume, 1 tone, and 24 frets, Custom 24. It's that classic Paul Reed smithing you can get everywhere. Good luck doing that on a Les Paul. But yeah, no, it's really comfortable, nice carves, everything. Let's just hear what it sounds like. Really versatile. If I knock the blues power off and just sort of put it in one of the in-between positions, yeah, really versatile guitar. I can imagine a lot of sort of session pros needing something that can do so much. That Custom 24 had a sort of odd sound to me. You know, the in-between positions were like a Strat, but not quite. And I just think it's a really versatile guitar, but probably for me it wouldn't be like my blues lead guitar. I think, you know, if I was, I think there's probably other styles. That's all I'm going to say. It's not something I would be looking for personally, but it is a Strat basically with humbuckers, it feels like, but slightly different sounding. It's a confusing guitar to me, the Custom 24, but I think it is like, not generic's the wrong word, but it's, you know, it's one of the standard sort of PRS models, and I think it's made to be as flexible as possible, really. So it covers a lot of ground, but maybe if you're very focused, like say blues lead player BB King style or whatever, it's probably not going to be what you'd be looking for, in my opinion. So now the DGT, this is a guitar I have a bit of history with. I had one myself. I didn't think it was the best guitar in the world. That particular one just wasn't quite resonant enough, and I just always felt like the pickups needed a bit more oomph, and so it didn't quite marry. But it was a beautiful guitar, comfortable, and for me better at lead playing than the Custom 24, for example, and the least PRS sounding PRS that I've come across. Let's hear it first and then I'll talk a bit more. Probably my favourite one so far. Oh yeah, the bridge volume is first. I think he spends a lot of time in the bridge. Yeah, the DGT definitely just doesn't sound as much like a PRS. It's got the more vintage sound to it, and I know that's what David Grissom and Paul Reed Smith were working on for years and years to try and get the exact sound he wanted. I love it. It's got a real swampy character to it, really nice harmonics. It is versatile. I don't find the coil tap, as usual with these, I prefer it in the humbucker position. Then in comparison, it just gets a bit thin. You probably, if you're going to coil tap it, you might want a pedal to then boost that signal, because otherwise it doesn't quite match up to me. But overall, being the fact that it's got a tremolo, a coil tap, and great humbuckers, it's super comfortable. And if you find a good quality one, I think it's up there as possibly the best Paul Reed Smith model to me. There's one other one that I'll talk about in a little while that I prefer probably, but the DGT is a really fantastic guitar. One of the few signature guitars, obviously apart from the Les Paul, I would say, but one of those signature guitars that isn't really, people would buy it despite not knowing who David Grissom is or whatever if they try it, and they don't mind so much that it's a signature because it's just a great guitar. Okay, this is a long video, isn't it? Well, there are a couple more guitars to try. There's the Robben Ford and there's the Special Semi-Hollow. And it's one of those that I came home with. Well, didn't come home with. Came home from the shop without, and then thought about for a week and then ordered. But we'll find out. Let's talk about the Special Semi-Hollow. Right, so we've got a Special Semi-Hollow. Again, another guitar I used to own. This one, I mean, fancy tops are not my thing, so I wouldn't be looking for that. I'm just looking for a great guitar. Let's go no pedal first. So you can tap. So with Paul Reed Smith, it's not really splitting the coil. I believe it's tapping the coil, whereby it's not exactly splitting it as you'd expect. It's tapped at a different sort of resistance level, if that makes sense. Lovely sounding. Amazing guitar. In a different life, if I'd been a session guitarist, it's probably something I would definitely have in the arsenal. As to whether I need it or not is a different matter, but this one, serial number 0341304, and I'm definitely not here to help sell, but it's just I want to tell you this. If you're ordering online, this is a lively, beautiful guitar. So just while I'm waiting for some other guitars to come through, so this is the Robben Ford. It's got a standard pattern neck, I think. I think Paul Reed-Smith said something, it was tweaked slightly for Robben. It's a Mccarty, but not a 594. It's got the two knobs, but it's also got a coil split. Ergonomically, what do you expect? It's a Paul Reed-Smith. It's going to feel great. For me, I'm never worried about ergonomics when I pick up a Paul Reed-Smith. It's sort of halfway between a Fender and a Gibson. I feel like that's where his heart is in this. It's nowhere near as bright as the Les Paul, sort of acoustically. I don't know if you can hear that. Let's come a bit closer. I mean, when you're at a guitar shop, I think you should try it acoustically before you plug it in. It's got a nice tone to it. It does have like sort of harmonic overtones. It's quite rich compared to the Les Paul. It's not the loudest acoustically guitar that I've ever played, but it's certainly not discounting it at this stage. It's really nice. This one's about £7.5. So I've got to play loads more PRSs today to figure out if this is one that I want. I'm not a huge fan of signature stuff. I know I've got a Marcus King Gibson, but there's nothing really on there to tell you that. So I feel like I'd have to change the pickup covers. I can keep that on the back because it's behind me. And I'd change the truss rod cover. Basically, it would be a Mccarty that cost a bit too much, but with great pickups that are really clear. I've just been checking the intonation, and it is in tune in almost every string up the neck. Really resonant. Yeah, the PRS coil tap thing is pretty good actually, isn't it? That's in full humbucker. And now splitter tapped. This is a really good guitar. I mean, if someone's a huge fan of Robben Ford and they want to spend this sort of money, this is a no-brainer. It's really just a very good guitar. Well, you're gonna have to wait for the third part of this series where I'm gonna try out a bunch of Les Pauls to see if I walk away with something. If you've been to my channel much before, you might know there's a decent chance of it, but I hope as I'm going forward in my guitar thing that I'm becoming a bit more discerning, so if there's not something to take home today, I won't be too upset. I've got this beautiful amp that I actually came for. But this is tempting. This will stay in the room while I try the Les Paul so I can compare them. So as I sat there in the shop right then, I didn't think I was going to be buying a Paul Reed Smith. In fact, I didn't even know for several days afterwards. I tried so many guitars that it had all sort of come together in my head and I wasn't really sure what I thought. If I just give the quickest précis before you actually see what happened, the Custom 24 wouldn't be for me. Something jangly about it. And the pickups weren't what I would want, and the in-between position sounded too over exaggeratedly that sort of stratty in-between sound. I wouldn't know what I would use it for, but I can see what it's for, you know, for the flexibility and it's really that core PRS thing. The 2594s, listening back a lot through editing, I realise they're pretty special actually. They do give a lot more of the vintage tone. Let's be honest, the sort of Gibson-y thing, but they are a bit politer. And the single cut one wasn't the right one for me because it was a bit muddy in the low end and just not as vibrant as I'd want. And the double cut one was really great actually. It just didn't, for whatever reason, in that when I played it, it didn't give me a feeling. But I could see that guitar, someone will really love that. The DGT. I won't be buying a DGT again. I've had one. It is a really good guitar, but it would never be my number one guitar. It doesn't feel like it's made exactly for me. But again, it's like a lot of PRS guitars, it's really flexible. You know, David Grissom had that made basically because he wanted it to cover everything he needed. So it does cover various bits of ground there, and it's something that if you're after a PRS with a vintage voice and you want a lot of flexibility and not like the old Gibson sound or whatever, it could be a great one for you. The pickups are unique in there and they're less PRS-ish than any of the other ones, I think. The Special Semi-Hollow, I think it's a great design of guitar. It's light, it's resonant, it has great options. You can individually tap each of the two humbucking pickups. It's got that middle pickup. It's just really brilliant guitar. And the Robben Ford was actually better than I thought it was going to be. Now, John had picked out the lightest example he had for me, so 7.5 pounds, and it was a pretty vibrant guitar. It did, so there was a track that Robben Ford did called Lonnie Johnson Blues. I want to say Blues for Lonnie Johnson. I might have that wrong. I'll put it up on the screen. But that I'd fallen in love with over that last couple of months. And there was a video of him recording it from last year using this black guitar, this PRS guitar. And I just loved the sound he got on there and the feeling and the playing, obviously. I'm not a huge Robben Ford fan. I don't know everything he's done, but I particularly liked that sound. And so I was interested in that guitar. It just felt that I didn't want to buy a signature guitar at that point when I tried it. But it was a really good guitar. I think if I had more spare cash to have a second PRS, well, you can tell that's not the one I bought. To have a second PRS, that would be the one. I feel like it's a bit rich at £5 but it is limited edition. If it was £4 in line with some of the other sort of guitars, I think it would be better. And I just didn't like having the Robben Ford name here and something on the pickups and something on the back is too much for me. But I like the design, the big headstock, and the feeling of playing it and the pickups. So overall, great guitar. But now let's see what's coming next. And I just want to add, this is being played now, the bit you're about to hear, through a 2-rock classic reverb signature with a Cherry Tone Centura, which is a Klon clone. And this is a very special pink one that is currently in a raffle, £3 a ticket. The proceeds, 90% of the proceeds are going to Breast Cancer Now. 10% of the proceeds are going to my fundraising project, the Pink Guitar Project, and those proceeds cover the shipping cost, the customs cost for the winner. We have various costs, websites, and yeah, making guitars for the project as well. So it will never be able to cover our costs, but it's good. It will allow me to continue this project on by taking that 10%, and I'm just being very open about that. But we hope to raise as much as possible, and this is a fabulous pedal. You'll hopefully hear that now. There'll be other clips of it on our Instagram and maybe also on YouTube over the next week. The raffle's going to have about a 3-week span starting from now. I'd go and buy as many tickets as you can afford. But you know, this pedal's worth about 250 quid. So for 3, 6, 9, 12 quid, you've got a good chance of winning it, and good luck with that. But now let me unveil what guitar I did order the week later, having captured its serial number to make sure I got the exact one. So this is my new Paul Reed Smith Special semi-hollow. I probably made it obvious earlier in the video by reading out the serial number, but this guitar really stuck out to me as just an example of a great guitar. It was vibrant and resonant and rich, warm, but also bright, and it didn't have any sort of muffled bits, wallowy low end or anything. And also, this is probably my favorite design of Paul Reed Smith, really. The mix of semi-hollow, different types of pickups, tremolo, and that just sort of rich resonance gives me something that none of my other guitars have. So it really finds a place here. Whereas I feel like the Robben Ford, I'd be struggling to choose that between an ES 345, 55, 35 or a Les Paul or an SG, being solid bodied, and I'd probably pick one of those other ones, even though the Robben Ford was fantastic, especially if you're a huge fan. Whereas for this, it doesn't compare to a 335. I mean, I'll compare them on a video, but they have a different sound to them. You know, they're a different size and different scale length and different pickups and everything. So it makes sense. Aesthetically, actually, Paul Reed Smith, you know, I prefer Fenders and Gibsons. I prefer the vintage look, the original, traditional. I do have more nostalgia for it. And I'd much prefer, frankly, that the guitar looked like one of those. I mean, you know, that's just my preference. And I certainly wasn't looking at the tops. I promised myself this time on this trip that if I found a guitar that sounded great and played great and felt great, I wasn't going to care what it looked like, even if it had been like a bright lime green or whatever, which, you know, I don't know. You do have to love the looks of a guitar. And overall, the semi-hollow is probably my favourite looking Paul Reed Smith. And I'm really glad this is a dark coloured one. And it's got a really nice look to it. It's a little bit over the top, but not too much. And I just really enjoy playing it. I won't make the same mistake of selling this one. I feel that this is probably a better example than the one I had before, which had a little bit more or too much low end to it. This doesn't have that problem. So I'm really happy. Yeah, I'm trying, you know, it might make it sound like, oh, I was forced to buy this guitar, but I wasn't. You know, obviously I love it and I feel very lucky that I can have this instrument. I'm glad it didn't have to be a 10 top or a wood library or a private stock. It's a standard one and it just plays fantastically. What can I say? I will be making standalone videos with it and other videos, of course, with it. I can play out with a bit more here, and you will see me also back at Peach looking at a load of Les Pauls soon. And remind you one more time, the raffle has gone live for this Cherrytone Centura, which when I compared all the different Klons, it was one that so sounded like the original you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. It has the same form factor. It's a lot of fun and it looks awesome. So if you want to support the project, this would be a great time to do that. These tickets are £3 for the other raffles, which may have bigger prizes, of course, but they're going to be more expensive tickets. So yeah, I really appreciate your support and good luck if you play. Otherwise, please subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content like this. This was a really long video. I cut it down as much as I could, but I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know down in the comments what you thought and give the video a thumbs up. See you soon.